Hello, everyone, and welcome to Talk Nerdy. Today is Monday, September 18th, and I'm your host, Cara Santa Maria. Now, I'm recording this intro from my hotel room in Madison, Wisconsin, underneath a blanket because it's kind of loud and I can't figure out how to make the AC stop making this weird wind noise. Hopefully, you can't hear it, but I'm really excited to be joining you guys today. I'm actually in Madison because the Freedom from Religion Foundation gave me an award. It's so nice. It's called the Free Thought Heroine Award. Heroine with an E. And I'm just absolutely honored. I'm actually jumping on a plane later today to fly to Moscow, Idaho, other Moscow, so that I can speak at the university there about genetically modified organisms tomorrow. It's been a whirlwind. I have a lot of schoolwork due. I don't know if I've told you guys, but I've gone back to school. So I'm working on my PhD now, and wow, it's a lot of work. So I'm trying to balance everything right now, but Talk Nerdy will continue. I promise. All right, I'm really excited about this week's episode. We get to talk to Dr. Rebeca Atencia, and I'll tell you a little bit more about her after I thank those of you who made Talk Nerdy possible this week. Remember, you can always pledge your support in multiple ways. You can go to the PayPal portal through my website, carasantamaria.com, or you can visit the Patreon portal, and that's probably the most popular way. It's a great community there at Patreon, and you can pledge your support for a lot of different creators, and they help you not go over your budget. The biggest supporters this week through Patreon were Phil T. Bear, Timothy Glover, Pedro M. Rosario Barbosa, Jeffrey Perez, Genji Keene, Charles Payette, Jonathan Wright, Christian Jeffrey, Stuart Ogue, The Honorable Husband, Jafe, Gabriel Felipe Jaramillo Gonzalez, Brian Holden, and last but not least, Jeffrey Sewell. I want to thank you guys so very much. Remember, there are other ways to support the show. You can rate and review on iTunes or on any other site that you use as your RSS feed, or your RSS catcher, I should say. And you can visit the Talk Nerdy store where you can buy super cool t-shirts, hand-tooled leather goods, hand-thrown pottery by H.P. Bloomer the Fourth. Incredible potter out of, where is he now? I think he's in Northern California now. He was in Colorado for a while. And I also have signed copies of Charlie and the Tortoise, a wonderful children's book by M.J. Mouton that I wrote the foreword to. So it's signed by both the author and myself. Those are for sale at the Talk Nerdy store. Okay, guys, I'm really excited about this week's episode. It is absolutely fascinating. Okay, I had this distinct honor to sit down with Dr. Rebeca Atencia. Now, she is the executive director of the Jane Goodall Institute in the Congo, and she's the manager and head veterinarian at the Tchimpounga Chimpanzee Rehabilitation Center. She lives there with her family. She's been working with these chimpanzees for years, and she recently also defended her PhD dissertation. So not only is she a veterinarian, but she's also a PhD scientist. And gosh, her stories. This one's been sitting in the can for a little while. I recorded it a bit ago, and it's finally come up for its air date. And I can't tell you how excited I am for you guys to hear this wonderful, wonderful conversation. So I'm going to stop talking so that you can hear all of the fascinating things that she has to say. Without any further ado, here she is, Dr. Rebeca Atencia. Well, Dr. Atencia, thank you so much for meeting with me today.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I'm very excited to have this chat with you. I'm not sure that I have had an individual on the show with quite your experience, your expertise, and your background. You work as a veterinarian, but you also have completed a PhD. Would you consider yourself to be a primatologist, or is your title much more encompassing than that?
Yes, I can consider myself a primatologist because I'm working for more than 15 years with chimpanzees, and I'm a veterinarian. And at the same time, when you work with all this time with chimpanzees, you learn more about their behaviors and their how they work, how they are in the communities. And yes, I am a primatologist.
Absolutely. And so obviously everybody listening can hear your Spanish accent. We're actually Skyping right now across the ocean. You're in Spain and I'm here in Los Angeles. Were you born and raised in Spain, but now you're in the Congo?
Yes, I was born in Spain, and I just left Spain when I was 27 years old. And I went to Congo to just, my idea was to stay there just for 1 year for in a release program of chimpanzees. But when you arrive to Congo and you see how is going on there and how much we can do and how much, if you do a little thing, you can make a huge change. And since 2004, I'm in Congo. Now 12 years that I'm in Congo working with chimpanzees.
Wow. And have you been with the Jane Goodall Institute that entire time, or is that a more recent development?
No, I started with another project with Help Congo with a project that is doing release of chimpanzees for more of 15 years. And after 1 year working with them, I started with Jane Goodall Institute since now.
That's incredible. And, the vast majority of your work obviously has been with chimpanzees at, I'm not sure if I can pronounce it correctly, Tchimpounga, Chimpanzee Rehabilitation Center?
Exactly, at Tchimpounga Chimpanzee Rehabilitation Center. That's a sanctuary, a rehabilitation center of the Jane Goodall Institute that is allocated in Congo Republic, and it has approximately 150 orphan chimpanzees. That they go through a process of rehabilitation until we can release them back into the wild.
Oh, that's wonderful. So they don't, they're not necessarily long-term residents there. The idea is to get them ready to go back and live amongst their groups in the wild.
That's the idea. The idea is to give them the freedom. And that's something that I learned there in Congo, that the freedom, sometimes we think that the freedom is the forest. It's just they give them the open forest, the wild forest. But the freedom is to give them the option to choose what they want. And some chimpanzees that they are captive, that they are now in captivity, they don't really want to go into the forest with elephants and gorillas and other dangers. They prefer to stay in islands, for example, forest islands that we can provide them food and other care. Other chimpanzees, they prefer to stay in small communities. Now, the thing that we give in the Jane Goodall Institute is the option to each one of them to have a better life, to have a space, the comfort space that they need, to give them the freedom of choose what they want.
And I can imagine that if you're specifically working with orphan chimpanzees who lost their parents either to poaching or to, other environmental or ecological consequences, that it would be even more difficult for them to find a space in the hierarchy in the wild.
That's true. That's the problem that we need to we have every day at Tchimpounga Rehabilitation Center. The chimpanzees, they come to the center, they are confiscated by the authorities, by the Congolese authorities, but they come in a very dramatic situations. Mm-hmm. They saw how the mother was killed in front of them, and the mother was killed by humans. That's the thing. The humans, they kill the mother in front of them, and sometimes they cut in pieces in front of them. The thing that happened, that when we rescue the chimpanzees, they hate us. They hate us, and they went through a trauma, a situation really traumatic for them. Now we need to give them care and to give them psychological care, not only veterinarian care, psychological care, and that's really an important part of our work, to bring them back their security, and they need to have again like an adoptive mother. At the beginning is a human, and slowly we bring them to a community of chimpanzees and take time. And some of them we cannot give them back their security, and this because they are with this trauma since they are very little. It's so hard for them.
I can't even imagine what a task that would be, simply because, there are, I don't know, communication complications between species. There are difficulties empathizing between species. Of course, we've learned so much in the past several decades because of work like by individuals like yourself, by individuals like Jane Goodall. But you can't just tell a chimpanzee what you're trying to do. You have to show with your actions, don't you?
That's the thing. That's for example, this chimpanzee is something that for me is really that was impacting when I saw that when they come, they hate humans, and we need to establish a bond with a caregiver and the chimpanzee at the beginning, and at the beginning they hate us, and something that is incredible at night. They have nightmares, and they wake up and they start to cry, wah, wah. And the thing that we need to do is just to touch them and to just tell them, okay, you need to be calm, don't worry, don't worry. And we are humans, they are chimpanzees. But this contact, these words, that they are not even in chimpanzee language, in any language, just tell them, just, okay, don't worry, don't worry. Make them to just start asleep and stop with the nightmares, and slowly they go back to the normal behavior. And it's just incredible because in that critical situation, they understand our language. And until they come back to their groups, they really, when you are in a trauma like that, you understand when somebody is taking care of you.
Oh, that's fascinating and so heartwarming. You know, there are these great similarities between humans and chimps, and probably we could say bonobos as well, that these are in many ways our closest evolutionary, or they absolutely are our closest evolutionary cousins. I'm sure that somebody like yourself, more than anyone else, gets to be reminded of these things on a daily basis. What continues to surprise you? What continues to remind you that we're just not that different?
That they remind me that we are like them. We are like chimpanzees, really, in their behaviors, in their communities. How they cooperate between them, how they create this dominancy between them, and the females protect babies, but the females they just try to get the power through the males. Is so interesting how they are like human societies that is really like us in their behaviors.
And you have the opportunity to not just to study these individuals and not just to treat these individuals, but to bond with them on an emotional, on a psychological level, like you mentioned. You mentioned that actual physical contact is quite important for resiliency, for healing after trauma. How long did it take, and how complicated is it for you to be in physical close contact with these great animals on a daily basis?
That's at the beginning is the moment that we establish this bond with the babies when they just come, when they come with the trauma. But slowly we try to move away from them, and they go back to the groups of chimpanzees or of other chimpanzees. But that bond that you establish at the beginning is forever. And that's the reason I'm still in Congo, is because I established this bond with specific individuals of specific chimpanzees, and year by year I can see that these chimpanzees they recognize me. And if something happened in their life, for example, in the moment that we move them from one group to another, we move them from one environment to another, they become like babies, like humans. When you change your environment, no? You become like a baby, and what you are looking for, where's your mother, and they just look for me many times, and for other caregivers, no? And that's really incredible, that bond, how like 10 years later you can see how that chimpanzee recognize you, and they can see in you that you are a part of their life, part of their family. That's just amazing. I don't have words for describe that.
That's just incredible. I mean, we think about a lot of things in terms of the human perspective. So when we think about lifespan, we think of how long human beings live. When we think about emotions, we think about our own emotions, and we try to apply that to other individuals. How long-lived are chimpanzees? I know there's probably a difference between chimpanzees in the wild and captive chimpanzees, but what is that lifespan range?
In captive chimpanzees, for example, at Tchimpounga sanctuary, had a chimpanzee that he died with 70 years, and it's like 70, 80 years. It's like like a human, really. They can live a
Absolutely.
long life. But when they're on the wild, they have every day they have more danger of like elephants or the wild chimpanzees. They can attack them, and sometimes in the wild they live 40 years, 50 years. The life on the wild is shorter than in captivity.
But it's still an incredibly long lifespan. I mean, we could compare that to, pre-industrialized human beings, to human beings prior to modern medicine.
Yes, yes, exactly like that.
It's incredible. It's incredible to think about the commitment that must be made. And like you mentioned, the bond that is forged between human and non-human primates when you almost enter into this contract with them that you will be there for them and that you will work with them. Because I can assume that if you only came there for a year and then you left again, there would be heartbreak and there would be separation anxiety and possibly even some resentment from the chimpanzees themselves.
Yes, and I don't know if I can explain you one specific situation that happened to me. That was one of the situations that made me just to think again in what kind of species the chimpanzee is so close to us. I have in one situation that happened in the forest that I being attacked by another chimpanzee, that I was doing a noise on the tree, and the chimpanzee, he was thinking that I was doing a display, and he just came to me and attacked me and bite in my face,
Oh, wow.
and the thing that happened is that I don't know why, I don't know really for what reason, another chimpanzee just protect me for this one, and he just put his body in front of this one and protect my life. And at the beginning, I didn't understand why this thing happened. Why one chimpanzee put his life in front of for protect myself. And it's because that chimpanzee, I was taking care of him a few months ago. He was really sick. I was taking care of him, and after that, it was like, okay, you was taking care of me. Now I'm taking care of you, and he just saved my life. That this kind of experience is forever, and it show you how similar are to us, and how they can, even we are different species, but they can understand our feelings, and they can understand that we need help sometimes, like they need help sometimes.
Absolutely. That's incredible. Is that the closest call that you've had? Is it the most dangerous or scary experience that you've had?
I have several scary experiences, but that one was really was quite difficult because the chimpanzee that attacked me, he tried to call the other ones of his group for. They tried to hunt me. Really, I was hunted by them, but it was my friend the chimpanzee that protects me from the others.
Oh,
Yes, that was one of the more scary situations that happened to me in the forest.
that's just incredible. I think a lot of times those of us who have not had contact with these very charismatic and large creatures, non-human primates, we might infantilize them or we might think of them in it without the proper respect. And so I think taking the time to understand that obviously these are wild animals, these are animals with their own thoughts, their own feelings, their own volition. And they are potentially, I mean, they're very, very strong. We have to remember
Exactly.
that.
That's Yes. Sometimes when we see in the past when they were using chimpanzees in entertainment in the TV, they show only the baby chimpanzees, and the people they were thinking that they were just so funny and so easy and they are like pets, and no, and that's not the reality. A chimpanzee is a wild animal that is can be 70 kilos, 60 kilos, and they are heavy and they are strong, and they can even kill us so fast, if they want. And the thing is that having them in captivity, is like pets. That's not appropriate. And for many years, we saw that in films that having chimpanzee was fine, and that was not the truth. No, was not the reality. It's for this that having computer images of chimpanzees and having don't having not using alive animals for doing the films is just amazing. It's a huge change in the human society to be able to do it.
Absolutely. You know, when we talk about these orphan chimps and we talk about what happened to their mothers, what happened to their families, this, devastating problem with poaching, what really, from your experience, have you seen there in the forest? What really is the driving force behind that? Is it, this idea of alternative medicine? Is it about food? Is it about bushmeat? Why do you see that most of these creatures are still being hunted?
They still been hunting. The first thing is that the way that the forest is open now, deforestation is a tool that the hunters they use for go into the deep forest, and they have access to areas that before they didn't have access.
Mm-hmm.
And when they hunt the chimpanzees, they don't need really the meat. It's even expensive when they hunt the chimpanzee and they try to sell the meat of the chimpanzees. Is expensive. It's not something that they need for their life, and they sell that is something like in a nice dinner. If they have meat of chimpanzee at the dinner, is great.
Mm-hmm.
You are show that you have power. Now it's not that they need that, but they hunt the chimps because they have access to them, and the bushmeat is still happening. Sometimes because they don't know that it's illegal to hunt chimpanzees, and an important part of the increase of the hunting is because for the deforestation. That's the thing that I saw in Congo, deforestation and the access to this deep forest, and the thing that is really moving in that direction. The hunters, the illegal poachers. Yes.
So it really comes, it comes down to status. It comes down to power. It comes down to trying to prove to their peers that that they are capable of getting a hold of something that's kind of rare and sought after.
Yes, and that because it's expensive, it's a way to show that they have money, that they have power. They can eat that meat that is difficult to get.
Ugh. And the thing is, the meat is obviously difficult to get for many reasons. One of them is that these chimpanzees are not doing as well as they have done historically. What is the conservation status of a chimpanzee? Are they endangered? Are they threatened? How many do we know exist in the wild?
The chimpanzees they are in danger, and there are many studies that are done about the number of chimpanzees that are in the wild, but it's quite difficult to do the same study all around Africa, and each study sometimes is quite different. And the good thing of the chimpanzee, they can adapt very well of the change of the environment, but if the environment is still changing in the way that it's going now, it's like if we are destroying their house, where they're going to live. That's the thing. Now we need to really focus in this habitat destruction. That if we don't take care of the forest, not only chimpanzees, gorillas, elephants, all of them, they are going to disappear.
Yeah, and even right now, chimpanzees themselves are really only found in Central and West Africa, and bonobos are even more kind of sequestered. They're only found in the Congo, aren't they?
Yes, that's the thing that you found that you don't have a space for them. You don't have their house doesn't exist anymore. It's like only that small that spot in all the world that they can live. And the thing that sometimes we don't understand that everybody responsible of that. It's not only the hunter that go into the forest and kill that chimpanzee. Sometimes we are responsible of that, and we don't know that we are responsible at what level. When we try to buy a piece of, for example, a table that is made by wood, but it's for wood that come from the forest.
Mm-hmm.
We don't take care about from where this wood come, and if it come from illegal logging company or it comes from a plantation. If we don't think about it, if we don't think in the the day-to-day basis, what we buy, what we are demanding every day, because it's sometimes it's from other countries that we ask for this kind of wood for the illegal logging, but we don't know that we are doing that, and we are part of the illegal trafficking at the end. And it's important for be responsible. It's everybody is responsible at the thing of the thing that is happening in Africa. It's not only the people in Africa. It's everyone in all around the world is responsible of that.
Yeah, that's so important to remember, because I think that we often find ourselves, especially in sort of the Western world, feeling like we are very far removed, and honestly, not even bringing these things into our consciousness on a regular basis. But we, in many ways, are the end of the chain that, or the end of the line that's actually beginning in these habitats of these chimpanzees. And if there weren't a demand for whether it be bushmeat or for the habitat, the trees, in order to make that furniture that you were speaking of, if there were no demand, there wouldn't be a push to produce supply.
Exactly, and sometimes the demand that is happening is high, and we cannot see it. Like for example, the oil palm, these plantations that are now all around Africa of oil palm plantations. They are destroying the forest, and you can buy a lot of food in the supermarket that is made with oil palm, and we don't check that if they use that oil or not. We are just part of the illegal traffic, because we are part of this deforestation. And it's just these little decisions that we take every single day in our lives. We are making a difference for the chimpanzees. And it's no question of taking a gun and just kill a chimpanzee. It's question of what we eat every day, what we buy every day. If we are part of this illegal traffic, at the end.
And the truth is, it doesn't require that much mental energy. It doesn't require that much work on our part to ensure that, read the ingredients before you buy something. If it has palm oil in it, see if it has a seal that says that it was, sustainably found. See if it has a seal that says that, that company, for example, supports chimpanzee research. There are a lot of different ways that you can kind of do your due diligence to make sure that you're not contributing to the problem, but are in essence actually helping to mitigate the problem.
Exactly. I say to many people all the time that you don't need to go to Africa. You don't need to go to Congo and work directly with the chimpanzees for the safe chimpanzees. You need to work in your day a day in your decisions, in the decisions that you take in your day, in what you eat, what you buy, and like this you are helping chimpanzees, gorillas, elephants, and all these animals that live in the tropical forests of Africa, Central Africa.
It's funny to me, maybe funny's the wrong word, but it's quite depressing to me to think about the fact that we have such a long history of cruelty with regards to a species that is basically almost human. Obviously we evolved from a common ancestor quite a long time ago, and we have somewhat different evolutionary paths. But genetically speaking, for example, what is it, a 1% difference in our coding DNA?
Yes, yes. We are really similar to chimpanzees.
It's just incredible. And anybody who's watched a nature documentary will see these profound similarities that will actually strike you on a deep emotional level. I mean, these kinds of reinforcements must happen with you on a daily basis.
That's the thing, that even in my personal experience, I've been accepted by the chimpanzees, because we are bringing chimpanzees back to the wild. And when you release chimpanzees, you go with them into the forest, and you are part of the team. You are part of their community. They accept you like part of the community, and they try to communicate with you. And it's like so amazing to see, just to walk in the forest in the middle of them, and you are like one more, and they are telling you like a snake is there, they're telling you an elephant is coming, just run, just do that. And there is a moment that you forget that you are a human and he's a chimpanzee, because you are the same. The only difference is the language, is that they don't speak English, they don't speak Spanish, they speak chimpanzee language. That's the only difference that I can see with the chimpanzees and us.
So, for somebody who works with them so regularly, how fluent are you in chimpanzee? Are you able to understand them quite well, or do you still have limitations?
I understand very well the chimpanzees that work with me, the chimpanzees in captivity, and the wild is a little different, but the vocabulary is similar, and I can communicate with them, and they respond to me in some basic things like where is the food, we go in this direction, we go in the other direction, a danger is there, or just come quickly, things like that. But it's really basic. It's really, really basic.
I can only imagine though, because I think about, my, I guess, daily interaction with an animal would be my dog. And I'm very close to my dog, and dogs are quite social creatures. And I feel like my dog and I are able to communicate on a very deep level. And yet he's still quite far removed from me on an evolutionary line. So I can only imagine that bonding with a chimpanzee, you would be able to communicate in a way that's almost just like bonding with a toddler.
Yes, that's and the chimpanzee. The thing that I can see that is very different with other species is that they have hands, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes when they communicate with you, it's with the hands, and they like us, like humans, and it's so strange. Even when they are afraid of something, they just if you they hug you, or if they are with hands. It's so, and they communicate with vocalizations and changing the face and with the hands and with the body, with all together. No, it's no like this not happen with the chimpanzee. They cannot tell you something that is going to happen in future, or they cannot tell you something that happened in the past. And humans were able to put that information in a document, and even when we died, somebody else can read the thing that we wrote. But a chimpanzee cannot do that. That's the limitation that they have in the communication point of view. And for me, that's the real difference between chimpanzees and humans.
Oh, it's incredible. Yeah. I mean, chimpanzees laugh, right? There must be commonality when you find something funny together because you'll both laugh at that. Have they been known to cry? How do they show how when they are sad?
They cry, but they don't cry. They don't have tears when they cry.
Mm.
They have a way that they communicate, that they cry, and but it's not like humans. It's different, but you recognize when they are crying,
Oh,
and when they are sad. You recognize when they are sad, when they are happy, when they want to be bad with you, because they can be very aggressive. The bad thing of being part of them is that they can be aggressive against you, because the chimpanzees, when they establish their communities, the dominance in their community, they are really aggressive with one to each other. Then if you are part of their group, it's like they're going to be aggressive with you. It's for that we need to take distance with them, and then they need to go away of the humans, and they need to be independent.
what motivated you? What led you to want to first work with chimpanzees, especially given that you are in the Congo and there are populations of bonobos in the Congo, and they are much less aggressive than chimpanzees?
But humans, we are aggressive,
That's true.
and humans are we are really like, for me, I think that we are really like chimpanzees. We are aggressive, and we live in communities, and the way that the chimpanzees they live, they have a fusion behavior community in their community. It means that they don't need to go all together. They live. You have a community that can be like 40 chimpanzees, and they don't go together all the 40 chimpanzees. They know they are in a territory, and all the 40 chimpanzees are in that territory, and they recognize one to each other. And in the morning, one chimpanzee can be with other chimp. In the middle of the day, go with two others. After, they go with other three, and at night sleep with only one. It means that it's really like humans. when you wake up in the morning, you are with a friend, and after you go with another friend, and after with another, and after you go to your house, you have your community, but you don't go with all your community to one place to another. It's really like us.
That's
It's
interesting.
for that I really like the way that they behave, because I can see ourselves in them, and the way that they create their communities. No one, one male wants to have the power. It's not that they start to fight for the power directly. They start to create bond with other chimpanzees, with the dominant female, with a male that maybe is going to be strong enough, and they try to manipulate once and other until they go into the power. It's like human. It's really, really human behavior.
Gosh, that's fascinating. And of course, you mentioned males and females, and there are clear distinctions between some gender roles within chimpanzee society. And we see that also within human society. I've always wondered this, as human beings, many people who have not had much exposure to primates may not be able to recognize individual primates by their faces or by their mannerisms until they've gotten to know them, because they're an outgroup, right? So many human beings might say, oh, all chimpanzees look the same. But of course, to you, you can recognize them very easily by their mannerisms, by the way that they look, by the way that they sound. You can also, because you are a veterinarian and because you know how to recognize these things, easily tell the difference between a male chimpanzee and a female chimpanzee. Can chimpanzees easily tell the difference between male humans and female humans?
I think so. I think so. In other species, it's more clear, but I think that recognize how strong you are. For example, sometimes with males, that if they can see a male human, they just they can try to just put the dominancy against that male humans. But I think that they really recognize the difference.
Do they see you, for example, you are female, you are also a caregiver in the truest sense of the word, both with medical care, but also with psychological care. Do they see you, do you think, as a maternal figure, as a mother figure?
Yes, they see me like a mother figure and like a veterinarian. Actually, they know perfectly that I am veterinarian, and when they are sick, they come to me and they show me their wounds, and that's
No,
amazing.
that is
That's really
incredible.
amazing. That and they when they have a wound, they start to cry and they come to me and they show the wound, and they want that I take care of the wound. That's really incredible.
Oh my
And at the same
goodness.
time, they recognize me like a mother figure. And the same thing with the caregiver, that they recognize perfectly one human to another. It's not that the same way that I can recognize every individual for their face, their behavior, and their personality. For the chimpanzees to the humans is the same. And sometimes they recognize that some humans, they have this they are calm, and they are not stressed when they are close to them. They can feel really inside each person.
Do you,
They can see inside.
do you think that there is an added benefit? Do you think that it is helpful doing the kind of work that you do, being female? We think of sort of famous primate field researchers. We think of Jane Goodall. We think of Diane Fossey. We often do think of, and there are, of course, incredible male primatologists out there. Who, Franz de Waal comes to mind, who I think many of us look up to and read a lot of their work. But do you think there is something special about being able to assume that mothering role?
Really, there are a lot of men that they work with. They are primatologists, and they are great primatologists. But this thing of the women being with chimpanzees, that's something that we can see all the time, no? And I have my own opinion on that, and it's like for evolution, a woman is selected because for the behavior with the babies. No, in one way you recognize some behaviors of the baby before they talk. You can see that the baby is sick before they talk, because if you cannot recognize that the baby is sick before they talk, your baby is going to die, and you don't have a somebody that bring your genetic to others. And I think that the woman there is like a genetic selection of the woman for have this aptitude not to recognize behaviors without talk, without speaking. And you are with a chimpanzee, they need to tell you things without a normal language, without English or Spanish. They need to talk to you with their own language, with chimpanzee language. And sometimes the women, we are able to understand them, and that make that link that bond is established with them. I think that there is something related to that.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And it probably goes both ways as well. You know, like you said, there's this evolutionary advantage to human women that you may be a little bit more capable of picking up on those nonverbal cues. But I would assume, or I would be interested to know if the chimpanzees themselves don't establish trust with you more quickly because they see you as a mother figure. They see the way that you are with the young, and they're able to, especially because they have so many problems trusting humans because of the situation that they found themselves orphaned in.
It's for sure that they can see on, for example, in my case, they can see on me when I take care of them when they are little, or other caregivers take care of them when they are little. They recognize me for years and years, and even, that's a really critical moment for them. And that moment that I'm there for take care of them and give them hope in their life, they're going to remember that forever. But at that point, I don't think that it's really a problem of male or female. It's no question of being a man or a woman. It's question of being there in a critical moment.
Yeah, and I think that translates to human society as well. There are these traditional roles that we think are very neat and tidy, but the truth of the matter is your caregiver is your caregiver, male or female, the one who was there for you, or sometimes if you're lucky enough, the both that were there for you when you most needed them are the ones that you establish the strongest trust with.
Exactly. It's more about that. Who was there when you was in difficulty? And many times it's a man, many times it's a woman. But the thing is that, for example, with baby chimpanzees, I like to put a woman taking care of them, because when they are sick and things like that, sometimes, at least in our place, the women they understand that better. Maybe because they have babies.
Yeah.
Some of our caregivers, they understand when the chimpanzee is sick and when the chimpanzee need food or water or things like that.
So
Basically.
So you mentioned, and I just have to go back to it because it is blowing my mind literally right now, that when the chimpanzees become injured, they'll often come to you for care and they'll show you their wounds, which to me just shows an incredible amount of foresight, because many human beings don't want to go to the doctor when they're ill because they're afraid of the doctor.
Yes, I have that question all the time. Why they come to me? But the thing that I try to do is that I try to take care of them, but no in aggressive point of view. I try to take care of them, give them taking care of the wounds, but no no knocking down them, no hand inject needles to them and things like that. I try that. It's always other person that does the bad things. I only take care of them, and they can see that when they are sick, and they can see when we take care of their wounds, they become better, and they recognize that very well. It's when they come back to us for just looking for care.
That's incredible. And obviously it's reflected in their own, societal and cultural habits, because we know chimpanzees quite well to be very fastidious groomers. So there is something that's quite understood about the fact that being clean and being cared for leads to a healthier life.
Yes. And even they ask to be grown by us, some chimpanzees, for establish this relationship, this bond with the caregivers.
Oh, that's so funny. I'm just now imagining how much of your day is actually just spent like picking bugs off of chimpanzees' backs. You must do a lot of grooming to establish that kind of bond.
But just we have that relationship with the chimpanzee at the beginning, just when we do the quarantine of them. After that they go into their groups and they just can see us in distance, but they keep that contact with us, but it's visual contact. It's not really day-to-day basis that we have this direct contact with chimpanzees. We try always that they go back to their group as soon as they can, when they have this security on themselves, and when they are healthy, they go back to the chimpanzee communities.
Yeah, and that's obviously a very good thing. It must be a good sign of progress. Have you ever worked with certain individuals that really displayed, I don't know, arrested development, some developmental problems where they were unwilling to go back with their groups, where they wanted to stay behind with you and kind of hold on to these childlike connections?
No, yes, I saw many chimpanzees. They have behavioral problems, and they develop behaviors that are not chimpanzee behaviors. And sometimes it's because for this trauma that they have happened when they were young, and they cannot adapt to their group again, to the chimpanzee, and it's quite complicated to deal with that. Actually, we are working a lot in personalities. We are doing personalities of every individual for see what's the problem of each of them, and we found now that there is a relationship there is a direct relation with the way that they went through the trauma and the personalities in the future, how they change and how the sociability in their groups. And it's so important what the life and the impact that the first impact of this trauma that happened when they were young, when they saw how the mother was killed by humans, how we manage that trauma. It's so important. It's something that is so basic. But for example, the first quarantine period, the time that I spend with the caregiver, that is like being like only 8 hours or being 24 hours is a huge difference. Because when the caregiver spend day and night with the chimpanzee at the beginning, when they are alone, they are afraid of everything, and if the caregiver spend only 8 hours, it means the day with the chimpanzee, and leave the chimpanzee alone at night, is really bad for the behavior of that individual in future, because they create insecurity, create that this they become more autistic, we can say,
Yeah.
more solitary, and they cannot have normal social behavior for their chimpanzees. It's so important, that bond that they establish with the caregiver. And I said caregiver, and can be a human caregiver or chimpanzee caregiver. So important at the night, because they are afraid of being alone, like humans, no? Like little kids that they are afraid of being alone. Chimpanzees are the same. And when you do the quarantine period of them being alone at night, was terrible for them. It's the moment that they have all these nightmares, and they wake up and they cry and all that. And having somebody close to them, sometimes we try to give them adoptive chimpanzee mother,
Yeah.
if we have that. If not, we give them a human caregiver that stay with them day and night. Just these 3 months of the quarantine that they need to be alone.
You know, it's incredible because it shows how important a deep understanding of psychology is in the type of work that you do. Because I think to a lot of naive thinkers, you would expect an opposite response. You know, I mean, it's obvious to somebody who has studied these kind of relationships in humans and in non-human primates that if a child feels abandoned, they will develop really unhealthy attachments to their caregiver later on. But many people might naively think, oh, if they can sleep on their own now, they're going to be better at being on their own later. And it really does have the opposite effect.
Exactly, has the opposite, because these 3 months are really critical in their life. They are making a difference in their life, in their personality in the future. For me, I'm a veterinarian, but I'm working together with another person at Tchimpounga Rehabilitation Center, and she's a psychologist. She's a human psychologist, that she's just working with me at the sanctuary, because like myself, like a veterinarian, can take care of the health, of the physical health of the chimpanzees, but the psychological health is so important, and it's 50-50. You cannot have a physical health and you don't have a psychological health, and it's so complex, like humans.
It's
They can
incredible.
get depression, they can be depressed, they can be happy, they can be, and just to pick up these little things, these small things that you, okay, this chimpanzee has is depressed, this chimpanzee need to change the colleague, we need to find another community for this chimpanzee or another group. It's quite difficult. It's for that we have a psychologist on our team.
It's so, I mean, it makes me think that we can learn so much about ourselves by studying our closest cousins. You know, there's some of these things that seem quite obvious in human development and human relationships, yet we as a society often don't get it right with our own species. So, I mean, the difficulty posed by trying to get it right with a species that cannot communicate as effectively as we can is quite great, and I think it's quite promising to hear that there's a multidisciplinary approach to caring for these animals.
Yes, for me it was something new, to understand that taking care of these animals is you need a psychologist. You need a psychologist, and you really is quite complex. This the way that she works with the chimpanzees in that point of view, because she need to work a lot with caregivers, and she make all the questions to the caregivers, and the caregivers they give the answer to the personality of every chimpanzee that we have, and it's so interesting because you learn a lot about ourselves.
Oh, absolutely. So I have to ask, usually I ask these things at the beginning, but you know, the content of our conversation has just been so fascinating. I want to know a little more about you. You started as a veterinarian. You have since gotten your PhD. But going back to the beginning, when you were first studying biology and chemistry and the things that made you go to veterinary school, you know, we think of veterinarians often as treating dogs and cats and birds, and maybe in rural parts of America, at least, you know, there are some veterinarians that treat farm animals, horses and cows and pigs. We don't often think people go to vet school because they want to work with chimpanzees. How did that come to pass?
Since I started veterinary medicine, I started really veterinary medicine when I was very little, because I was thinking since I was really like maybe 5 years old. I said I'm going to be veterinarian because I was in my mind my idea was to take care of wildlife, and actually wildlife. And for me, sometimes you have somebody that you want to be like somebody else, no? And for me, Jane Goodall was an important part in my life, not to see in the films what she was doing in the forest, and Diane Fossey, what she was doing in the forest was like, oh my God, that's my dream. But at the same time, I have something that was happening close to my house when I was very young, and there was this guy that was working at the forest, close in the place that I was born, that he was a he was he was taking care of the forest. What do you call this?
I don't know. I guess there's different words for it. Maybe a conservationist, an ecologist.
Yes, he was like an ecologist, a conservationist. And the thing is that one day he knew every single eagle, every single animal in that forest, where they were living, where they had the babies and all that. And one day there was a huge fire at that forest. And I was thinking, all these little animals, they are going to die, all of them. And this guy just went into the forest and took all the babies of the wildlife. And for me, it was impressive. And he took all the babies, and he took the babies to his house. He rehabilitated these babies, and when they were adults, he released them into the forest.
Wow.
And I said, "Oh my God, I want to be like him. I want to be like him, like Jaime." And I said, I want to do something like that, to give them a second chance to this animal that sometimes they go through a difficult situation. And with that in my mind, I studied veterinary medicine, and since the beginning, I was focusing wildlife, and I did my training in zoos in Spain, in in safari park and zoos in Spain. And after that, I had in my mind I need to work with chimpanzees. I was working with chimpanzees actually, but in captivity in the zoos.
Mm-hmm.
But I said I give the freedom to these chimpanzees. I need to give them the forest, and I need to go to Congo, to Africa. At that time, the only place in the world that they were doing release of chimpanzees was Congo. It's for that I decided to take that plane and go to Congo, and they offered me that job to be part of the release team of a group of chimpanzees in the forest, and I learned too much of the chimpanzees. My idea was to stay in Congo for 1 year, and 12 years later, I still there. I still in Congo working with chimpanzees because they are amazing animals. They are just incredible, and we learn every day. We learn a different thing of them.
Gosh, that's incredible. And when you're in Congo, where do you live? Do you live in a village, or do you actually stay in a research center in the forest?
I live in the rehabilitation center.
You live in the center, okay.
Yes, but the center is like we have in the place that I live now. We have it's a kind of forest and a kind of habitat that you have savanna and forest. It's like you have a big savanna and patches of forest. And it's very nice. It's very nice, and we have the chimpanzees there. I live there with my husband and with my kids. I have twins.
Oh,
They are 6 years old, and they live there with me.
that's incredible.
All of them, and all the chimpanzees. But they are not together with the chimpanzees. The chimpanzees, they are in the forest, and we have like an electric fence around the forest that like this. The chimpanzees that they go we have islands of the forest, and we have different kind of habitat that the chimps they can live in. We live there in the middle of all of them.
That is so cool. As your children get older, will they be introduced to some of the infant chimpanzees, or do you think you will always keep them quite separate?
We should keep them separate of them. They can see the chimpanzees in the distance, and they recognize very well all their vocalizations, and they recognize the individuals actually. But we need to keep distance with them. The chimpanzees that can be really aggressive with human babies and with child. That we need to just keep our human babies safe of the chimpanzees. But they really recognize them.
Is it your hope that your children will grow up and want to be scientists as well?
I'm sure that they will be, but you never know what is going to happen with your children. At least they understand what means conservation, because sometimes we need, I don't know, they call me from another protected area that they have crocodiles, that they confiscate a lot of crocodiles. I need to go there to give some medication to them and to release them. And I go with my kids. We go together to release the crocodiles, and we go together to release, I don't know, other species. And slowly they understand, what you should do, what you should not do, and basic things like, for example, when you eat a fruit or something, you need to plant a tree, and they are learning that since the beginning. And I think that is making a difference on them.
That is incredible. I can only imagine, I mean, what a different upbringing that these Spanish children are having in the Congo, so different than many of the kids from the neighborhood where they were born. Or were they born in the Congo?
I was pregnant in Congo, but they were born here in Spain because it was a surgery. I could not have them in Congo.
Sure.
But I after that, they came to Congo and they stayed there with us.
Oh, it's incredible. And you, of course, come back to Spain periodically on vacation to visit family. How often, how many months a year do you live in Congo versus coming home to Spain?
I live in Congo all the year, and I come into Spain in holidays. Like now, for example, 1 month in summer, and now that I have the kids, I try to go in Christmas. I try to go like 10 days or something like that in Christmas. But I live in Congo, really. It's just coincidence that now we are talking from Spain.
That's incredible. And of course, because of the demands of your work, you speak English. You speak English quite well. What other languages, or do you speak any other languages?
Yes, in Congo we speak French. That's the language that they speak, the people there, and other language that is called Monokutuba. And it's no many people speak Monokutuba, and it's a basic language. But that's is in that region that we work. They speak Monokutuba.
So have you had to pick up at least some of that as well?
Yes, yes, and I normally we speak in the work we speak always in French, but in Monokutuba sometimes when we are just with workers, with specific workers that is difficult for them to speak French, we go through Monokutuba.
And of course,
It's quite funny. That language is just so basic, but it's funny sometimes.
I love that. And of course, you also you speak Chimpanzee, which I think could be considered another language as well.
Yes, really, it's another language because when I speak chimpanzee, but I don't speak, for example, other species language. I don't speak some monkey language. I don't speak that. And sometimes people they think that because I understand chimpanzee that I will understand orangutans, for example, and I don't understand orangutan language. Really, I feel so bad for that, but I don't understand orangutan language and even sometimes mandrills because we have mandrills at the center, but I don't understand mandrills as good like chimpanzees, and I do mistakes all the time in the communicating with them.
That's incredible. And so, of course, you're a working veterinarian. You have your family there at the center, but you also now have a PhD that you finished somewhat recently. What was the impetus to do even more work and get that PhD, and also what field did you get it in?
I really like it to do the PhD because I did that in physiology of chimpanzees. That means that to find what's the normal values of chimpanzees in question of the ECG, electrocardiogram, ultrasound, scan, what is normal, what is abnormal. And everything started because when I started working in chimpanzee medicine, I found that we didn't have normal values of basic things of hematology of chimpanzees. Sometimes we don't have the normal values. If you don't have the normal values, how you are going to know the chimpanzee is sick or not?
That's incredible.
And I was really interested in cardiology of chimpanzee because one of the first reasons of deaths of chimpanzees in captivity is cardiac problems. And we don't know yet too much about chimpanzee cardiology, and my PhD was really focused on that. And it's so interesting, like what is happening, how similar we are to them. And actually, we are working very close to a university in Cardiff that they work with humans, and they work with humans that they do sport, but in a competition level, in a high competition level. And they are really interested in our work because they can see the similarity in humans and chimpanzees. And when we work with them, it's like how similar we are and how we can learn from one and to each other. And in this case, for many years, humans want to learn of chimpanzees. They want to use chimpanzees for learn about human medicine. But this time, I like to learn chimpanzee medicine from humans. Human medicine is just the contrary.
I love it. It's fascinating. What an incredible career, and of course, it's really in many ways still at the beginning. There's I'm sure you're going to dedicate so many more years to improving the understanding of this just this wonderful creature that we are, at least for the time being, still lucky enough to be able to have a relationship with. So first, I want to thank you for taking the time to chat with me, but even more importantly, I want to thank you for the incredible work that you do.
Thank you very much. But really, that work that I'm doing, I'm not doing that work alone. It's like everybody, even yourself, that when you're interested in chimpanzees, you are interested in conservation, and you are doing a difference, like doing an interview to me or talking to others about what is happening. You are doing the same as me. You are helping the wildlife. You are helping conservation. We are working together in that.
Yes, and of course, anybody listening to the show is doing their part as well because they're taking the time to really think about these things and apply these perspectives to the mindful decisions that they make. Well, Rebeca, I want to ask you before we hang up, I always close my podcast by asking my guests the same two questions. And of course, because of your fascinating career, I think that you will bring a special perspective to these two questions. So would you be okay okay if I ask you these right here at the end of the episode?
Yes, yes.
All right, great. So they're kind of big picture, just to warn you. But when you think about the future, in any context that is relevant to you, you know, the future of your own life, the future of your family, the future of the chimpanzees, or even just the future of humanity, the first question is, what is the thing that you are most worried about, most concerned about, keeps you up the most at night, preoccupies your time the most? And then the second question, to end on a more positive note, what are you most hopeful and optimistic and excited about in the future?
Okay, I don't know if I understood very well the questions, but for me, I always worry that if I don't have enough time
Yes.
for all the things of that I would like to do, and to if we don't have enough time in our life for do all the changes that we can do. And really, I think that even if the chimpanzees are in danger, even if the forest being cut for us, even if we are killing elephant, chimpanzees, gorillas, I think that we are the humans. We change. We have the option to. We can think about the thing that we did bad, change, make a decision, and change our behavior and become better and make a difference. And I really believe that we have a huge hope in the future of the chimpanzees in the forest, that we can really, they are in danger, but I think that we can make a difference. And the new generations, they are showing already that they care about the wildlife, they care about the conservation point of view of the environment. And I believe that humans, we are so special and we are able to change. That's my hope.
You know, I agree with that. The amount of damage that's been done at our hands because we have not been mindful and we have been making decisions that are short-sighted or that are selfish, I think is really only matched by our capacity to undo that damage and to actually preserve the environment and to ensure that in the future these animals are even better off than they were before we started to intervene. And really, I think it's just a matter of being able to hear from individuals like yourself, the people whose boots are on the ground, the people who are doing the hard work every day. When we hear your story, I don't know, I can't really speak for anyone else, but myself, I'm just so inspired to make better decisions in my life. So again, I just want to thank you so much. This has just been really eye-opening.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for the interview.
Absolutely. And hey, everybody listening, thank you for coming back week after week. I'm really looking forward to the next time we all get together to talk nerdy.